I think we each got a side.
In this
like
corner.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
She went to the ladies' room, so.
Yeah, that's fine.
Lead off here. Here. Hang on, let me look. Sit up. Yeah. Ready? You want to stand behind that? No.
Leave me out.
Everybody all set?
We sat next to your best friend tonight.
You did?
Yes, at least he told me.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's okay. We're chit-chatting.
Oh, sorry.
That's it.
All right.
Oh, so how do you feel after your first debate?
Well, I think it was really a great opportunity for voters in the 5th District to get to know both my opponent and myself a little bit better. I think the central question facing us is, what will it take to create more middle-class job opportunities in the 5th District? My opponent thinks that a big tax increase in January will translate into more jobs. I have a very different view, because I've seen what the major tax increase in Connecticut has done to job opportunities. It has made them evaporate. Connecticut's unemployment rate is 9%. What I've learned in Hartford is how not to create middle-class jobs. You don't create middle-class jobs by raising taxes. You need small business owners to reinvest what they earn in more job opportunities, in more plant, bigger equipment. That's the answer in my view.
What about her comments about Keystone that's ruining the environment and it's a disaster?
Well, you know, the Keystone has undergone some of the most thorough vetting. I've been hailed as an environmental hero by the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters. I would never support a project which would threaten the environment. Now, the truth of the matter is, Canada is going to extract these tar sands, whether we take advantage of them or not. That's not the issue Congress is facing. The issue Congress is facing is whether we should bring 4,000 jobs. And I learned yesterday at the Stanley Works, they build one of the welders that will be used to construct this pipeline. So there's good news for a Connecticut company if this pipeline is built. It's not just something that exists in the abstract. It's a $7 billion investment that will bring 4,000 desperately needed jobs to this country.
That was one of the longest back and forths between the two of you, was about this environmental question. And I'm curious, how much are you asked about that, though, out on the street among voters?
Well, the real question is, what are we going to do to bring gasoline and home heating oil prices under control? Gas at more than $4 a gallon is an incredible hardship for working families. This country has lots and lots of domestic sources of supply, which, if we take advantage of them, can give us not only energy security, but national security. And it's energy that's going to propel the economic recovery in this country.
You've mentioned from the start that you're being outspent in this campaign, and she made a bold statement tonight about your financial report. What is she implying? That you certainly have the money to put in $500,000 into your
Well,
campaign?
I don't know what she's implying, and none of the statements that I made were personal in nature, just reciting the facts. Elizabeth Esty has put $500,000 of her own money into this campaign to buy advertisements which misrepresent my views and which are intended to scare seniors to try to win a vote. I'm going to earn and keep the trust of voters in Connecticut by telling them the truth about my position on Medicare and Social Security, which is I will not support any changes to the program for people aged 50 and older who need to have the peace of mind that the program they've paid for and they've earned will be there for them.
Anything wrong with her spending her own money?
No, there's nothing wrong with her spending her own money. It's this is America. She's worked hard, but the fact of the matter is that money, there are few members of the middle class who have $500,000 to spend buying TV commercials. That was the only point that I was making.
Can you explain your point earlier about the factory? I think she had an investment in the factory of layoffs. Can you give us the context of that?
Well, I think this is America, and I'm happy that Elizabeth Esty's family has prospered. They should. But what she said was, this is a factory that she owns, that she hasn't visited in 20 years. So one wonders if that's the degree of attention that she pays to a factory that she owns. Maybe it's just a minuscule part of the empire. I don't know. But I can tell you where I report to work every day. My name's on the door, and I'm very familiar with what's going on day in and day out.
What's the name of the factory and the headline?
I think it's called Deco Products, which is owned by a limited partnership that she is a director of. Yeah, it's in the article in the newspaper. It sounds like a pretty convoluted arrangement.
Sir, she made a big point of linking you to more, I guess, unpopular Connecticut Republican leaders. Talking about the speaker, are you committed to not only supporting Mitt Romney, but supporting John Boehner for speaker?
Well, I'm going to vote for a Republican for speaker. I'm a Republican. But the commitment, and for her to suggest that that's the most important vote that I'm going to take, I think reveals how different our approaches are. Because to me, the most important votes I will cast are the votes that will solve this country's very serious problems. I've had the courage to be independent for 18 years in Hartford. I have a record that belies any suggestion that I will bend to party influence. I have stood up to my party when I think they're wrong, and I've stood up to the Democratic Party. And remember the land swap, which was the most abysmal violation of trust, the worst environmental decision made in my career in Hartford. And I stood up against it. I voted against it. I spoke against it. So I'll speak against Democratic misdeeds and Republican misdeeds. I have the courage to be independent. That's not going to change.
As far as the health care law, did you say that it would leave $30 million insurance?
No, it's not what I say. It's what the Congressional Budget Office says. And so to suggest that this solution is a solution that's going to provide health care security for all is just not supported by the facts. It's a solution which costs way too much and delivers way too little. We can do much better.
30 million, that was the figure?
30 million is the figure that the Congressional Budget Office...
After it's implemented?
After fully implemented.
So 30 million will not have health.
That's correct. They'll be no better off today than they'll be no better off then than they are today.
Sir, and if Mitt Romney is elected and he tries to pass a version of the Ryan budget again next year, you would vote against that?
Well, I'm going to vote for what is the priorities of the people I represent. I'm going to look at any piece of legislation that comes before me. I wouldn't have supported the Ryan budget, as I said, because of things like the reductions to Pell Grants, which I think are counterproductive. If we want a healthy Connecticut, we need to open the doors to higher education, not raise the bar.
With the exception of congressional salary, I don't believe either of you embraced any cut tonight. Is that right?
Well, I'm happy
You were
to...
invited. You were invited to it.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll cut my salary. I think that we should reduce the size of the federal workforce through attrition. One of the recommendations of the Simpson-Bowles Commission, that we should only hire back 2 new employees for every 3 that retire. I believe the budget of Congress should be reduced by 15%, and the budget of the White House should be reduced by 15%.
So you think federal government staff should be reduced through attrition?
Yes, and those
This
are also...
doesn't really matter what they do.
Pardon me?
It doesn't really matter what the job is.
I'm sorry. What the Simpson-Bowles Commission recommends is that for every 3 that retire, we hire 2 back. Now, clearly, public safety personnel are going to be a priority, but the truth of the matter is we can and will need to reduce the size of the federal workforce if we're going to get our arms around this deficit. The other thing we need to do is reduce, as I said, the budgets of the White House and Congress by 15%, and ask federal workers to absorb a pay freeze. Again, another recommendation of the Simpson-Bowles Commission for at least a year while we work our way through this mess.
Simpson-Bowles also has revenue enhancements, including one of the recommendations is to stabilize the transportation infrastructure fund. It would be to raise gasoline taxes by 15 cents over 2 years. Do you embrace the report